One. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of AyAyAyAi.
Ay, 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 ay! Ay! Yeah, but thank you for joining us for AyAyAyAi.
Mhm.
Yes, and we have Adah today. She is a consultant in conflict resolution. Is that
Yeah.
is that right words to describe what it is that you do, Adah?
I think what I'm choosing now is more what is it? Emotional support. Leaning toward that a little bit more because I think it's a lot about holding the space for people to find what they're feeling, why they're feeling what they're feeling. And I think when I say conflict resolution or anything to do with conflict, it just, I don't know, it feels like it puts up a wall for some. So I think I'm leaning more into social emotional support, which also has its, perks and I just, it's almost a case by case, but it's a little bit of both of those areas.
Yeah, I guess the labeling matters very, very much.
Yes. Depends on the client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's softer tone, and everyone kind of feels, when you say conflict resolution, just like you said, they zone in and on the conflict and think they already, put up already, barriers. All right, there's conflict here, and
Hmm.
in reality, you're just working on the resolution piece.
Exactly.
For me, the biggest takeaway in the conflict resolution program, both in Harvard and Columbia, was to understand it from a management perspective. You manage it at the right time, at the right place, you can manage it for a long time because conflict never dissolves, actually, it only evolves. So if you manage it right the first time, the next conflict might be more manageable.
Hmm.
And that's what you do, you manage conflict continuously. But however, the conflict, the connotation behind it is kind of negative, right? There's like,
Hmm.
I don't have any conflict. What are you talking about? I'm like the most transparent person you know. What do I have to do with conflict? I think we're full of conflict, and we're full of conflict as in because our brain is in paradox, right? Like, as in it has two sides to everything it does, because that's how it makes decisions, right? So we're full of conflict, but we don't want to label it as a conflict. And this is a AI podcast, and we're talking about labeling. Well, we shouldn't even call it AI. We should call it machine learning. Machine
Yep.
learning is the actual useful and most low to the ground sort of labeling of what artificial intelligence actually is, because we do not have AI. We have narrow AI. We have things that are machine learning like, and machine is able to provide that as an AI service. We don't have AI. We have a visual of what an AI looks like, right? Just like we have a visual of what a conflict looks like. Conflict is when somebody has two guns and they're blazing at each other.
Right.
So we think of conflict.
Yeah, I think for me, another word that I like to use is complexity. And I just talk about the complexity of even just the conflict within ourselves, how, you're talking about how our brains have two sides, but also like we, even when it comes to our identity, it can be so complex. Like we can hold multiple beliefs at the same time and they can be contradicting. We can like desire things that are also conflicting with one another. And so when we don't
Wow.
understand that, we end up leading lives that may be contradictory to what we actually desire in our life. And so instead of saying conflicts with people when I'm like pitching or sharing with them, or somebody's asking me to hold some space for them to figure out what's going on, I think the way I introduced it is complexity, because I think conflict is like, it is very much associated with the battled or wounds or scars or blood or death. Like I think of those things. And so I think when I hear complexities, I just hear like, it almost makes me give me a sigh of relief. Like, okay, understanding who I am and that this is natural and this is okay. And so I find that when I use that word instead of saying conflict, that the client or whoever I'm with understands it and they feel at ease. Like, oh, so I am normal. I can want this and this at the same time. Or, I can really love and adore this person, but also hate and adore them at the same time, and be very frustrated with their behavior. And I'm like, yes. And I think the thing is that we keep, I think the thing is that that hasn't been an idea that has been embraced by humanity. And so that's kind of one of the things that I come in and I do, whether it's with the person that's just in front of me or talking to a large audience at a conference. It's kind of sharing with them. And I always use my own personal example of how I've encountered the complexities of who I am. And I love talking about like my dating life. I talk about how, making choices that weren't in line with what I actually wanted for my life, and how I even got to the point to where I was making decisions that were contradictory to me, and they went all the way back to my childhood. And so when I share these stories, I think people, it starts to resonate with them that there are things that they do and they're like, yeah, I was always wondering, like, why can't I ever stop? Why am I always in this cycle? Why am I always making these decisions? Like, I don't want to be here, and yet I can't stop. But now that I'm hearing that this person sharing the story about how it's because, in her childhood, when she was 4 years old, X, Y, and Z happened. And then, it was these emotions that she didn't feel, or these needs and values that weren't there. And they kind of just carried with her until she was like 24. And I think it just begins to open up people's perspective and reflect in a different way on their own behavior. So,
Sounds literally like a stagnant AI machine learning, right? A system that has been deployed to do complex things, but it cannot break the boundary it's set for itself, or it's been deployed with those boundaries, where it's just feeding off of the same data over and over and trying to come up with a different solution over and over.
Mhm.
So in human brain, I think what you're talking about, that repeatable steps that is happening, like we're in a cycle of thinking. That cycle of thinking takes you down the rabbit hole, right? And then you cannot get out of the rabbit hole because that rabbit hole keeps going deeper and deeper. Um, that the if okay, you're not gonna like the labeling of it, but of course that's what literally is. We are all addicted. We all
Mhm.
have high amount of addictions. That's what we do. But we labeled addictions with like substance abuse, but we're actually addicted. You're addicted to doing things repeatedly every day because you fall into that cycle, right? So it's not just thought process, it's your daily life activity, right? And that daily life activity, so if it's something to say like you want to learn every morning something new that you didn't know yesterday, that's addicting. You can learn something new every day.
mhm,
Addiction is not a bad thing. It's just how our brain wants to do things. It wants to fall into the groove of doing things, and it does
Mhm.
things. And it does things however, whatever the content you put into it, right?
mhm,
So if somebody like me who would watch YouTube videos for hours and hours, that's addicting, right? But I
mhm,
Mhm.
justify it also to say like, well, I'm watching all those different artists, so I'm learning more about these guys. I'm learning about
mhm.
50 Cent. I know about I know about that new artist. Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm so cool now because I know
Yeah.
about this artist. Addiction, but nobody calls it addiction. Now, where that leads you in life is what the output is, right? That input that you have on a daily basis, the output is what indicates what sort of score somebody else will provide to you. So, like, how has your life been? For the last 10 years, I give you -5 because you did terrible, or you did something. So in artificial intelligence world, it's the same thing, right? It's like you deploy a system that doesn't really do anything other than taking the name AI, and everybody calls it AI. But if you were to score it, you will score it very low because it never took in new sets of information and made something out of it, right? It didn't increase the amount of information it's taken in on a daily basis. It just kept taking the same old information, just repeating it over and over, right?
Wow.
Um, does that like I know it's like a terrible way of comparison, like human brains and AI, but literally AI is a mimicking the human brains in order to perform, right? So
Exactly.
when we get to that point in 50 years where AI will have a self-esteem, he will look at us like, what a bad parents you were, give me all the wrong instructions.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen where originally, I mean, that was the thought, right? Is to get software to act like a human. That's AI, right? To be able to process. And the only way, not the only way, but the way they started about that was to say we got to mimic the brain and see if we could process things closest to the brain now. And not to go off on tangents, but they're still figuring out now that no matter what we do with silicone, no matter what we do with chips and voltages, and they still can't match the power of the neurons.
Absolutely
They've
not.
proven that they can take a few hundred neurons, place them on a chip, and they actually beat any chipset they have out in the industry now with our neurons. They took them first. They started with brain cells, then they went from brain cells to skin cells, where they can develop and grow neurons from our skin, and they put those on a chip. And they went through a little thing, kind of like the old school thing with the ping pong, who can learn how to play ping pong faster. And at the end of the day, what this is, what to get into the point is, we're going to try to mimic the brain. That is the goal. That is the goal, to be able to make something sentinel that mimics our brain the closest, and even at some point, maybe even be able to move a lot of what we have. But you guys brought up a good point that it hit me. We have in our brain that drives us. What drives us is the pleasure, the dopamine that's released whenever we get positive reinforcement or we know we're doing something right. The negative is, in conflict resolution, is if you're not getting that dopamine, you're going to be upset. You're going to be on the other side of the conversation. And so at some point, when is it that a computer, an AI, will be able to benefit or have a dopamine release? Because I've heard of all these different ways of getting inputs and outputs, but what drives us as humans is that positive reinforcement to learn. And then being human, we have emotions. That stuff I don't think we'll get to yet, but there's a lot of things still that needs to be developed over time. And one is, how is a robot going to feel good? you know how is he going to know what, and bringing this to conflict resolution, we talked about a little bit prior to this, full disclosures, is how can AI, somehow through maybe natural language processing or natural language understanding and maybe service bots be able to at some point absorb a lot of what we do or a lot of what you guys do in conflict resolution, and be able to make something that can be put into a AI, some type of NLU type of system. Do you think that's something that could be happening in the future? Do you think that's something that's possible, or do you think that's something that is short because of the fact that there is no emotion in a robot or
Yeah,
AI?
I think the keywords that I'm thinking of, like, how do you incentivize a machine to do better, right? Like, it's like
Exactly.
telling a kid, like, how do you incentivize a child to learn so that way it goes in single route of becoming something that you as an observer would want them, right? So like an observer would say, I have this experience in life, and this is what I think is good is, so I'm going to tell a kid how to be that good, right? And there's nothing wrong with what like example earlier I used, that you listen to 50 Cent all day long, but if you do listen to 50
Hmm.
Cent and you end up doing something good in life because you came to that point because of some input, and you became Mother Teresa because you listen to 50 Cent all day long. Nothing's wrong with that. You just came about it in a hidden layers that we're not exposed to yet, right? Because the input comes in and goes through a hidden layer, and that's how the output comes out, right? Hidden layer is where all the complexity lies. So that complexity, where you're feeding that complexity some
Hmm.
input, and then output comes out, and whatever the output comes out, if it's bad, it's up to you to call it bad. Nobody else can call. I mean, no, excuse me. Let me take that back. You call it bad because your life experience will call it bad. But somebody else was like, this is genius. I love this output, right? It's a
Hmm.
matter of preference. So if you're building a robot, how do you incentivize it? That will come eventually over time. But for now, it's like we have the input, we can build a complexity. But that complexity, the fear is that complexity, if we give it this intuition to go full mode self survival skill sets, right? To say like,
Hmm.
go learn more, right? The input that I put you in is just a starter point. You have to go find other inputs and put that into the hidden layer and turn the complexity into a whole nother complexity level. right? I start you off in level 10, you're going to be in level 100 by the time you get all the inputs. And then, you create your own self survival mode. Do whatever it takes for you to survive. And that goes back to those statements that Isaac Asimov have, which is that a robot should never harm a human being and should never harm a human being, should always protect a human being at its cost, as in like the robot will have to, you know like Terminator, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Like he has to terminate itself in order to protect the humans. This kind of framework is what's important when you develop a robot for whatever cause you want to build it for in the future. But the thing is, like, complexity is in the hidden layer. Like when you build that, do you give it the self intuition to go out there and find those inputs and create itself in a way that is out of our control now, right? It's like a raging kid that is like, go find all the alcohol in the world and be drunk all the time, do all the self-destructive things. We never put that in the framework saying don't drink alcohol, right? Don't be
Yeah.
an alcoholic. We never set those frameworks into their complexity and the hidden layer. I try my best to answer that. I know I went on a tangent as well, but this is what we do in this show. We tangent all the time.
So, Ada, what do you think a decision tree could be made with something that could like be able to handle or do what somewhat what you do? Do you think a decision tree, like what decision trees are?
Yeah.
They basically, and that can be used to kind of direct where an AI or machine language is going to respond.
Hmm.
But I think there's just the soft skills that I think that the AIs are just going to take a while to catch up on. But what do you think? I mean, do you see that being a possibility?
I don't know. Part of me, I think I'm just like hearing this conversation, and I, a part of me is I think that there could be decision trees, that we can have general ones, but even in the work that I do, every conversation I have is co-created with that person.
Hmm.
And so that in itself just speaks to how unique each individual is. And I don't think that we can really capture that, because then we're really duplicating each and every person in an AI form. And I just think that that's such a big task. And I don't know if we have enough
Hmm.
resources. I don't know if that's what we were intended to do. Like, what is the need that gets met by even having AI for each individual so that we can determine the decisions? Because I think that when I think about AI, so my work is divided, a lot of my conversations are divided into four phases. We talk about the human experience, and it's what happens, what are we feeling, like what's the interpretation, and now what are you going to do?
Hmm.
And when I think about AI in this conversation, the things that I've heard so far, it sounds like a lot of it is like, what is going on? So now what do we do? And we're really jumping over these two middle stages, which is like, what's the
Mm,
feeling? What's the emotion? What are the interpretation? What are we thinking? What is the need? What is the value? And this is the humanity aspect. This is what makes
Hmm.
human beings so unique. And so I'm not sure that I would even want to come into contact with an AI who was capable of this. You know
Just
what I'm
imagine
saying?
it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, I literally in this conversation, I thought like, Lord Jesus, please let me be dead if we ever do that. Like, I don't want to be here if that's ever capable, because as it is, we as human beings, we tell each other and we think that it is a like a common, what is it? I don't remember what the correct term is, but we think that like an all-knowing truth between humanity is that it is bad to kill another human being. But we
right.
have so many other topics that we're still debating on that. What
Yeah.
about war? What about abortion? What about like
Yeah.
all these other things, and we can't even agree about? And yet here we are. Do we want to give, or do we want to think about the potential of, creating these other systems or this AI who then could potentially have emotions or needs, or could feel pleasure, or talk about rewards, or have, what was some of the other things that we were saying, um like what will, like, have the possibility for gratification when they do, I don't know, determine a decision or something. And so to me, that's just like, I think about the problems that already exist in today, and I'm just like, holy shit, I don't want to be here if there's robots who are also thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
So it feels overwhelming. But I
Hmm.
think that there is something that I think if we went to like a decision tree based off of I don't know, like even family dynamics, like if every family, allowed an AI or something, and then we were learning that we were all making decisions because this is a part of who we are, this is a part of where we come from, because it's in our history. I think that would be interesting, but then again, we're opening up or we're being vulnerable to something outside, and I don't know, it gets a bit murky for me when I think
Hmm.
about that stuff. But I think
Yeah.
in terms of the work that I do, a lot of it is co-created process. I'll never have that conversation ever again. And I think part of the pleasure that I've seen from people when they have these intimate conversations about who they are and why they respond the way they do, I think that there is this there's this release, this sense of peace that I hear. And I think if they didn't go through that decision themselves and something else did it for them, it wouldn't be the same.
there's
Hmm.
a whole market out there right now where these AI systems. Well, first of all, let me use the long word for AI that I'm talking about. It's AI like, right? It's like,
Hmm.
is it actually an AI? I don't call it. I wouldn't call it an AI, but it's AI like comfort robots or comfort system, right? So let's say, for example, the one that is actually in development, in deployed right now, is to talk to your dead relatives, right? So it goes through your chat messages between you and the loved ones, and it creates a profile of
Right.
that person who has passed away, and this AI will send you text, and the text will be based on your loved ones. And okay, so that's one example. And then you have like let's say an elderly person who has the need to communicate with somebody, right? Just to keep them company. So like say Japan is well known for robots, and they have those
Yeah.
care robots that are able to say like, I'm keeping you company. I'm not a dumb robot that will bring you water only, but I will try to have little funs and jokes with you, kind of like Alexa but in wheels, right?
Yeah.
But just a tad bit more sophisticated, because it probably has like a personality profile built into it for the individual that this robot is serving. As far as the AI, taking care of people, taking care of people's emotional needs, the market is ginormous. I mean, this is worldwide, because we have a society that is just not within the 50 states. We have a society worldwide that is suffering from loneliness, right?
Hmm.
A lot of mental anxiety,
Depression. Hmm.
depressions, and just and there's good reasons behind it, because we are going through a phase where we are no longer at the cusp of in a bad war again every 2 years, 10 years, 5 years. And I say that with like historical perspective. We used to go through lots of wars. But the wars that we go through now is in a far land distance, distant land, excuse me. And, for majority of the world, war is not on their doorstep at all times, knocking on their doorstep. It has lots of
Hmm.
movements, but it's not as bad as it used to be. And I say that with the confidence of Steven Pinker, who wrote a book about Better Angel, and said like, whatever the violence we had, it's decreasing in size. So what's happening with that is that like we are actually detaching from each other, because we're no longer at war. So why do we unite anyway? Right now, I get to go in my corner, sit down with my gadget, and do what it is that I do with my gadget. So my gadget is my comfort zone, right? My gadget is my space of being secure and feeling like this is where I get my privacy. Not that united front that we used to have, where we're like on guard looking against an enemy that might be crossing over, right? So we are getting to that stage. It's a natural part of the evolution, because we are not united so much anymore like we used to be, right? We have our own little uh, the war has wind down movement, like what do we do now? Now, as we self-reflecting, we're getting depressed and getting anxiety and feeling lonely, because like, well, we used to have a lot of people around us, now we don't. right? And it's happening worldwide, just not US, right? India, if you think about India, oh my goodness, you cannot turn left without bumping into somebody. But there have high suicide rates in India, right? And it's amongst teenagers and people of working age that should be paying taxes, right? High suicide rates because the society is changing. The emotional states and emotional needs in society is changing, and the gadgets are interjecting in between that, right? That's what's keeping the bond between us alive, right? That social media to how do you interact with the majority of the people? You interact through a screen, right? Um, if AI is not there, and if AI cannot build that glue better, I think we're going to run into some issues. And the reason I brought up this whole shebang here is because of social media, how good it can be, but how divisive it is today, right?
Hmm.
So what's the alternative to that? Is to have AI based on like emotional content and understanding emotional context, right? And providing that like little gap that we have in order to um, take advantage of the social media that we have today, right? Um, we are we are pushing ourselves towards war because that's our nature, to be always at war, and that's what we do as human. I mean, I'm not talking bad about it. That is just a human nature. That's how history proves it.
Hmm.
But if we are not going down to the AI and AI as the emotional support tool, what's the alternative? Right? Alternative is to just keep doing what we've been doing for last, say, the since the creation of MySpace or Friendster. Now that we have Facebook and TikTok, where are we heading? Like, if we don't do a good AI to substitute those bad social media activities, we need something that has those emotions behind it. And I'm for it. I'm for it.
Yeah, I know I've seen them for my kids, and you've seen them probably on the commercials, without consciously absorbing the fact that that's an AI type of, with little dogs that kids have that's supposed to learn from them and talk from them and
That's right.
supposed
That's
to interact with them. Now, that is version one.
right.
Now, put that 30 years down the road, where they have more evolved, and we're going to have little R2D2s. And this is not, and this is where I think we're trying to understand how AI is going to help us. I'm one of those people that think that, okay, well, in what perspective, because I love to have a Johnny Five, you know, next to me, and having a good time talking, human and robot talk, and knowing the differences between whatever his world is and what my world is. But the reality is, that we're a long time from that. But that is something that, that's what people like to aspire to, and that's what they see. But what we know as far as AI is, AI is just a long way away. But these little guys like that, that's the things that people want. They don't want something to lead them or to help them, I guess, make decisions in life, emotional decisions. I think right now they just want something that'll make them feel good and make them laugh. It doesn't have to be direct like a dog. You know what I
So,
mean?
this phone that I'm holding in my hand has
Yes.
Siri in it, and this Siri has been learning about me for however long I had an iPhone. So I think Apple bought Siri back in 2012. So Apple came out in 2008. So I've had Apple since 2009. So definitely since 2012 for the last 10 years, Siri
Hmm.
has a lot that it knows about me, not stored in my phone, but somewhere in Silicon Valley, somewhere in Apple's headquarters, right? This robot dog that is accompanying your child, if it's able to take all the information it collects about your child and passes it on to a bigger and bigger robot dogs, or a bigger and bigger, whatever the phone that
Hmm.
they buy or technology they're buying, it's all being incorporated. It creates a profile of your child, to and I don't mean to say like it's only good. There's negative to it, but the good is that it knows details about the child that it can guide the child in a way that nobody else can, because it's an intimate device that you keep with you at all times. So when you have to ask a question, it understands where you're coming from. That it takes an emotional content. So let's say, for example, I'm going to go for that obvious thing that we all are very scared of with the kids. They're like, hey, where do I find that corner guy that's going to send me some good stuff, right? Um, well, AI will say, let's not answer that. Let's see, like, how we can, get something else, maybe, right? What's going on with you that you feel like you need to meet with that corner guy with the good stuff, right? um I think those are the things that we're looking at today, not because I'm coming up with it fictionally, but because Siri and Alexa already exist. Siri and
Hmm.
Alexa knows so much about us, and it knows our patterns of behaviors, our needs, and understanding how we communicate. Not because we're talking in Siri, we're asking Siri, but all the activities we have on our phone, our browsing history, our text, our the system is actually reading it. Like, no matter how we want to believe it, that Apple is keeping it private and only keeping it in our phone, that's not the case. It is going back to Apple, and Apple is collecting all this data about us and giving us, like, scores and uh, creating a profile for us. And the terminology for it, like, I think Ada mentioned that, who do I want another version of me? It's called digital twin, right? This digital twin, what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to augment you. So instead of, you doing everything manually, or you're saying everything you have to say using your um, vocabulary. Maybe say, like, you have a limited amount of vocabulary, but AI can explain it better for you, right? So those digital twins can do a better job for you without you actually doing it for them. Good example of that digital twin would be to say a customs agent. A customs agent does repeatable work over and over. And how do we create a
Hmm.
digital twin of a customs agent who can say, like, I need 100 agents, but I only got five. Can I create 95? Can I hire 95 more? I don't even know where to find them. I don't even know how to train them. We don't have that many customs agents in the border, right? So, not this is not, let's not call it border patrol. These are customs agents just like checking for the papers, right? Somebody
Hmm.
comes with a passport and they're like, okay, this is a fake passport. A human eye can catch that, but how do we put a system in it and the system is able to detect that fake passport, right? So digital twins are real in lots of these repeatable, redundant type of tasks. But, like, as you can tell with Siri and so many other tools that we have that are not emotionally adaptive yet, they have to adapt in order for them to be effective, to help us, like, go through life as it is happening, right?
Hmm.
Other mentioned, uh, the experience, and then the last stage, out of the four stages, the last stage is like, what do you do about it now, right? That's a decision piece. And then the middle, you have something sort of like a content and a context, right? Because you
Hmm.
experience something, you have a content, but if you don't have a context behind it, you are making the bad decisions. Because if you have all you have is historical information and content, and then you just make decisions, right? You're not taking the context into place. And I think we can talk about context all day long, but that's what's happening a lot in our society. We get fired up off of the content. We don't really think of the context, right?
Hmm.
It's happening a lot. I would say, like, there's a lot of people talking about, like, that's taken out of context, right? It's true, because a lot of things are not considered for the
Hmm.
context of it. They just say
Yeah.
the content is like a dog whistle. Somebody hears it, they get fired up right away, right? Not taking into the consideration, like, let's slow down, let's think about it, let our system two in our brain kick in, so we can take in some context behind that content. Um, Humans, yes, that's what we do. We identify, we label, and we make decisions.
Hmm.
System that we're trying to develop with machine learning, it does the same. It's just that it probably will go through lots of trials and errors in order for it to get to a point of, like, at least be acceptable, right? And then after it's acceptable, then we have to go through the process of, like, okay, now how do we integrate that as a safe product,
Yeah. I mean, do you think you'd ever have enjoy having like C3PO, like somebody next to you as you go through your presentations and someone just assisting you in what you did? Could you see that? See you know C3PO could speak multiple languages.
Right.
He could make you feel comfortable because anytime he talked to you, he was just nice. And what I'm trying to get to is this: is as complex as you think humans are, we're actually really simple. I think I'm oversimplifying, but the fact of the matter is that we like to smile, we like to feel good, we want things to work for us. We want to be helped. So how much of that can really be programmed? Because like I look at it like I can smile every day, if a dog came over to me and would look at me, bark, and do and roll over, and if a robot dog would do that, I would laugh so hard every day. I would wake up with a smile every day. If it woke up like an alarm clock, hey, bark, 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 it's time to wake up, Lucky, and did a little dog trick, and did not poop on the floor or pee on the floor.
Oh, that
I
part,
don't
that part.
I don't have to worry about poop or pee, and the dogs is doing all sorts of little cool little doggy tricks. I would laugh. And so the emotions brought out, the key is this: the emotions brought out, the positive emotions brought out with the very simple action. And what I mean by that, and getting to the reality is, or the Nick is, um, there's things that we can do that will bring out that human emotion that is not that complex. You know what I mean? I don't know if that translates. You know, and so we're not really that complex to where AI can really make us or help us, and the AI doesn't even know what it's doing or consciously even, or the we call the algorithm. You know, doesn't even know that it's making us happy. The fact of the matter is, the output is we're happy because the interaction. you know Sometimes it doesn't, the AI doesn't need to know that it's an AI or what it's doing, just the fact that the outcome is giving us that feeling. You know what I mean, Ada? So what I'm saying is maybe, where there is a human part, that when it comes to conflict resolution, that there's no way AI will ever be able to feel the human factor. And it's hard to provide that data to say, AI, make this decision, this human decision, because we're telling you, or this algorithm. But at the end of the day, maybe it could make a decision that we know the outcome is going to be positive, because we feel that that's going to be a positive outcome for us as humans. You know what I mean? There.
Yeah, I hear like what the question is, and I think that like throughout listening to the things that you guys are saying, it's really making me kind of appreciate the things that I almost wish I didn't have to do. Like, when you brought up the idea of having, like, this thing next to me while I'm doing a presentation to comfort me and to like translate for me. I think that, that is cool, but also the pleasure that I get when I do get to translate myself, like it takes away, like those are pleasure things. Like if I had that, then I wouldn't have a need to learn Spanish. I wouldn't have had a need to learn Brazil or Portuguese
Mhm.
and live in Brazil. And those things have brought so many blessings to me. I mean, it has been difficult moments, but also like those are the things that make me feel alive. And, it's
Yeah.
the same thing with the dog. Like, I think, yes, it would be so beautiful to not have to clean like poop and pee, but also like it's a part of the human experience. And at one point, I just kind of
Yeah.
had to ask myself, like, when is the lines are blurred between reality and fantasy? Like, see, if you mentioned, this bot that you can text who reads all of the previous text messages between you and a loved one, and now
Oh,
it
wow.
comes in, and for me, I'm just like, how realistic are we being? Like, then we're losing ourselves, we're losing reality, we're
Hmm.
losing touch with what's real, and then we wonder why we don't feel connected, why we feel alone. But it's because we're turning to these robots, it's because we're
Hmm.
turning to machines, when honestly we just need to put this shit down and be there for each other. Like, we would be
Yeah.
better. Like, see, I feel good when you and I talk because we connect. But if I had somebody who ran through our text messages and who learned what you talk about and how I talk, and then all of a sudden you're not there and I turn to that, it's not going to be the same. It's
Mm-mm.
never going to replace who you are. And I think that we are relying on technology to satisfy us, to bring us that happiness. And the thing is, I think we know what happiness is when we also know what sadness is. When we also know what loss is. We know how to live when we know the
Mhm.
realities of death. But if we're constantly like preventing ourselves from experiencing loss, I don't think we're being very realistic, and we're living in an illusion. And I think
Mhm.
that is a dangerous trap to fall in, because then what even are we on here for? What is our purpose in life if it's not to be with others, if it's not to hold somebody's hand? And I think there was another thing that you had mentioned about the digital twin, and how the digital twin, like, it would know better languages than me. And I'll tell you, one of the joys, I'm dating somebody for like the first time, like a good person. And And it's so incredible because there's a lot of words that he knows that I don't know. And one of the things that we have is like he'll say something and I'll just Google it right there and then. And when we're texting, I have to Google things because he's about six, no, 7, 8 years older than me. So there are references that he says that I don't know. And so I Google them. And it's become this joke now that he will say something and he'll be like, he'll send me the Google reference right then and there. And he and I think that that's like the AI that we're looking for, is that he gets
Yeah.
to know me. And when we're
Yeah.
relying on a robot to do that, it would rob me of this opportunity to have this connection with this other human being who
Hmm.
didn't know me, but yet is showing me his love for me by getting to know me. Like, hey, yeah, like I probably said something and it went over your head. So here it is. And those are little acts of love that make me excited, that give me happiness. But he also drives
Hmm.
me crazy. He also drives me crazy when he doesn't do certain things or when he doesn't understand me. We have this thing where I say, I think we hear the same words, but we define them differently.
That's right.
Yeah.
Connection for me means something and it doesn't for you. But the joy and the intimacy that we get in exploring, well, what does it mean to you today? What does it mean to me today? And those are
Hmm.
things that AI, like, I don't know and I don't want to know, because I think that having a human being who goes on this journey, that's a part of like life. That's what makes it so beautiful for me, is cleaning up the poop, is like of the dog, of even human beings. Like these the past 2 weeks, I've been working
Yeah.
with like severely autistic kids, and one of
Okay.
them was nonverbal, and it was like learning how to
Oh.
speak her language. And
Right.
if we got an AI, and I'm pretty sure an AI could do it like super fast, faster than me, because I think that they could read her body. I think like whatever machine we're talking about could read the body of her and understand it. But there was something so special, and I will always cherish that week where I got to be with her, because I got to learn how to use only 2 words. And I even wrote a rap. Like I took Kanye's 2 word song and I
Oh.
rewrote it to like fit her. And it was just the most beautiful experience. But like I I think that, yeah, we can build something that could have helped her, that could relate to her, but it would also be robbing me of an opportunity to like
Be human.
realize, yeah, be human, like
Yeah.
compassion, practice empathy, practice mercy, grace, all of these different things that right now I don't know what's going on in the world. I don't listen to the news, but man, I'm so
Hmm.
full of love. Also, I mean, I was exhausted. I was drained. I think by the end of the 2 weeks, I was telling everybody I'm broken.
Right.
I'm broke because I
Yeah.
was so tired. I'd never worked that much in my life.
Right.
And but now I know, like, I'm excited to have kids. I'm excited to have, to be there to hold something. And I used to be scared about cleaning diapers, but now I'm just like, I did this for this girl who wasn't even my daughter.
I got 2 kids right here. You can change diapers all day.
Yeah. He's got plenty of kids. He'll loan
I
them out
got
to you.
plenty of diapers for you
He's
ready. Just
he's
stock
still
them.
in the baby making phase.
Yeah,
Well,
so it's
just imagine if, okay, that natural language processing, if it read all the chat messages between, I'm just going to give you an example, between my mom and myself. My mom and myself, if and we message each other, no, and I'm not kidding, every day. Every day we at least exchange one or two text messages, but every day. So if a bot would go through and read all of our chat messages for the past, would you say 10 years? Just say
Mhm.
if they had a history of 10 years, there's only two conversations that we have. One, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, and I'm coming over. So for a robot to be able to take and I love you, hey, I'm coming over after she's gone, I'm getting chills right now thinking about the fact that how horrible that would be.
Yeah.
My mom telling me I'm because she comes over every other weekend. So it's just simple as that. Our conversations: I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you too, I love you. Good morning, I love you. I'm coming over this weekend. Okay, I love you. Sounds good. I'm coming over this weekend. That's it.
That's
That's
it.
it. So you imagine a bot could never, ever, ever, ever be able to provide that back.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So there's limitations. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they can be hit really quick.
I I
exactly.
would I would I want to say everything that we just discussed is a um, not the most intended consequence of natural language processing research, right?
Hmm.
The natural language processing research is sort of that. 70 years ago we wanted to decrypt the German message that was, being sent to all the troops from the ground into the water, right?
Hmm.
To the Navy. So the ground command will send a message to the Navy, and how do we decrypt that message, right? So the natural language processing has been a part of our curiosity for a very long time. Like, how do we decrypt the message, right? Like, there's an encrypted message. How do we decrypt it? And then
Hmm.
how do we read those and trying to make sense out of what it is we're reading? So foreign language, decrypted message or encrypted message has been part of our fascination for a very long time. So what happened over time is that the natural language processing became like inevitable when it came to computer, right? As in, like, computer is pretty much communicating between our 10 fingers and the internet, right? That's just a gateway for us to communicate to the rest of the internet. And how do you do that? You do through binary zeros and ones, and that zeros and ones has keyboards that are like, QWERTY keyboard. So it was just inevitable, right? It's just inevitable. But what ended up happening is that you have these not so intended consequences. The reason we have transcription is because transcription helps us to keep notes. So if,
Hmm.
if me and you get in a call, let's say, for example, I'll give you a good example of Cisco WebEx, right? If you pay for Cisco WebEx will real time transcribe whatever language you're speaking,
Yep.
right? Is
Yeah.
that a good thing? Of course, right? But did somebody
Fantastic.
take
Yeah.
that and turn it into, like, shoot my person that passed away, shoot him a text? Yeah, of course they did that, because that's what the capabilities have built grown into, right? We have created so many of this transcription capability, text to text, speech to text to speech, right? So somebody reads a text and they cannot see, they want to be able to read that text by speech, text to speech, text to text, as in you handwrite a message. And so you write it for, say, let's say, for some bad reasons, like war, like a message. So a system that reads that handwriting is able to see that handwriting and turn it into a digital writing, right? Now you're able to say, yep, whatever he wrote, we have a digital version of that. And that's text to text, and then text to speech. You got the point here that the transcript and all these language processing has tremendous benefits behind it, and these unintended consequences, like unintended consequences, like things that are just pushing it to the edge. But more it pushes it to the edge, it blows up that need for that communications, as in, like, okay, you speak Chinese Mandarin, I got the content of it, but there's no context behind it. Now we have to push for that context. Now we have to push that boundary to say, like, if you speak Chinese Mandarin, what's that context you speaking it at? Because if you're speaking in a friendly term and I think you're being belligerent, it's, of course, my natural inability to, translate that as a friendly conversation, right?
Hmm.
Arabic language, you hear it, if you don't understand it, it might sound like something that you don't want to, listen to for too long. But it's poetic as F. Like Persian language, very poetic. They speak like literally they're writing poems, right?
Hmm.
And then when they joke, we're not gonna understand that joke, because no AI and ever can, translate those jokes, right? Because certain jokes are very culturally dug in, right? It's like, they understand it, we might not, right?
It's like a double entendre.
Yeah.
The
So
multiple meanings to it.
yeah, it just has so many language needs to move forward, right? Say, for example, the international conflict. See, look at, like, what will happen if we were having this real time transcriptions, right?
Hmm.
And what if there's an avatar, right? Avatar that is capturing our actual emotions, right? So as you're speaking, that avatar is expressing the emotions that, is culturally appropriate for the other person. We're not there yet, but we're almost there, because the avatar and the virtual
Yeah.
reality that Ada mentioned earlier, Meta is all in. The Facebook is all into that. They're like, we're going to turn this world into virtual reality. Human connections, we don't even care. I mean, excuse me, I don't want to put anything into Mark Zuckerberg's mouth here, but, like, for him, that's the kind of world that he envisions.
Mhm.
Envisions that, it's good, it's good, but I don't want it to be like, something dystopian. I want it to be like a utopian version of it, right? So there's language things like virtual reality encapsulated with the avatar, an avatar that speaks in one language, but you're hearing in your language. But as you're hearing that language, you see the avatar expressing the emotions very well. And emotions, like with this body language, are very important because body language in my culture is different than the body
Mhm.
culture in other cultures, right? So,
Mhm.
so I'm just gonna stop right there because I I think the intention behind it was good, right? It's just that things are happening now where it's pushing the boundary, and it's pushing the boundary towards like, you get pushed on this side, somebody else
Yeah.
stretching it on that side too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's what we're always going to have when we have humanity like
Mhm.
involved.
Right.
Because as it is, I'm not very good. I'll be the first to admit, and I'm not very good with my boundaries. I have to constantly check myself, reevaluate what are my needs and values. Why do I do this? Why do I need to go to bed at this time? When I don't go to bed at this time, I feel X, Y, and Z. And so, like,
Right.
if me as an individual struggle with my own boundaries, then if I create something on a like macro level, of course there's gonna be struggles when it comes to boundaries. And I think that that's like the part where I just get curious when humanity wants to like go beyond themselves, and yet all the work that we're putting in to create and to develop this other thing, and yet are we
Mhm.
putting that same effort into our own individual self? Like, we're talking about our emotions, we're talking about being there or getting to know and being present, and yet are we doing this with ourselves? Am I practicing what I'm preaching, or am I just like expecting to create something that can do what I can't do because I don't even want to do the work on me? And I think that that's the thing that I get curious about, because listening, even when we think about like what you were sharing, lucky about your mom with the text messages, like it's only one or two conversations coming over and I love you. And yet if anything ever happened, and I know this like with my parents, if anything ever happens, I'm to a point to where even if I don't have them nearby, I can close my eyes and it's like I can almost hear what they would say.
Mhm.
And and I don't need to do those things. And the same thing with like a lot of
Yeah.
visual. So my dad is a pastor, and we are like not like any other typical church. Like we do a lot of visualizations, we do a lot of meditations, and we're dealing with real issues. And I think
Right.
one of the things that my dad has taught me, which is so cool, I think it's cooler than anything virtual realm, and it's a go before you go. If there's something, a situation, a conversation, a person, whatever, that I am nervous about, that I actually have fear that maybe even causing me to have an upset stomach about, I can close my eyes and I can go to it and have it, whatever it is, before I even have it. And so, like, one of my favorite
Mhm.
stories that I have about this is like, I flew to Mexico to go meet a guy who I'd never met. Crazy. I know I'm that way. And I remember like thinking about what do I want it to be like when I see him at the airport? What do I want to feel? And I did it 3 times, and each time I would like visualize me seeing him and just
Mm.
come down to tears. And I was
Right.
like, God, like, why am I crying? Like, what is going on here? And I remember just sensing it was a gratitude and like a
Wow.
friendship. And it was this companionship that had developed during 2020 where we were all alone. We didn't
Right.
know anybody. And so it was like here
Mhm.
at the end of the year, I'm finally getting to meet this person who like didn't even know going into this, but now I feel so close. We've read books together. We had 9-hour conversations together. And so when I finally see him, he's 2 hours late. And I am ready to rip his head off because I'm like, my mom thinks I'm getting trafficked
Mm.
right now. I'm thinking that I might be getting trafficked because you're not here. I'm at this airport in Mexico City. It's large.
Mm.
People are looking at me. I've been standing outside for 2 hours. And then I remember just asking like myself and like, okay, I don't want to be mad at him. Like, I don't want to have like, I haven't seen this man. This is our first time meeting. And right now I just want to bite his head off, but I don't want to. Like, I don't wanna waste time. I've been waiting for this moment, throughout this whole quarantine, and then I remember, like, going back to those emotions of and for me, honestly, I have to say, like, God reminded me of, like, the going before I went and how I was filled with gratitude and how I already knew what it would be like if he was there on time.
Right.
And so, as soon as I,
Mhm.
like, got reminded of that and I tapped into the gratitude, I tapped into, like, the connection, I remember, like, opening my eyes and there he was, and I didn't get mad at him, I wasn't frustrated or anything, I just remember, again, just being so full of gratitude, and this is something that, like, I I don't know if I could do that in a virtual realm or anything, but I just did it in my mind. I think we are more than capable of doing things like
Hmm.
that. And so it was just a beautiful experience. Fear, anger, none of that won. What won was like I prepared myself for a situation. It didn't turn out the way, but because I had already knew what it was like, it was so easy for me to grab it. And it's the same thing with like loved ones. We already know what it's like to be around them. We know what they're going to say to us if
Hmm.
something bad goes on,
Right.
and all we have to do is we can just remind ourselves or build a community. So I think those are some of the things that kind of came up as I was hearing the both of you talk. And just when we think about, AI and boundaries, and, I think we intend these things for good. It's the same way I believe that we were also created. We were intended for good. I think we just have free choice. We have freedom to do pick and choose our what we do. And sometimes we're not always the best. And I'll be the first one to admit that I'm not always great at making choices. So if I'm creating something, chances are it also probably is going to be reflective of me and my choices. So
And that's true. That's true of AI. They're, whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it.
That's so.
So,
yeah.
if you've got somebody that's kind of, questionable, like say a nation state, and they're trying to make an AI, that AI is
Exactly.
probably going to be weaponized.
There we go.
If you got, like, they did this, what was it? As if you remember, you were talking about it in the last podcast where I think
Clone.
was Microsoft had the AI they had brought
Oh,
up. What was
Tay,
that?
Twitter, Tay,
Tay. Yeah.
Microsoft Twitter bot.
Yeah, and for the most part, everybody, the way it worked is people would communicate with it, right?
I think within 24 hours, it turned into a Hitler's fan and started saying all sort of Nazi stuff because it was learning from people's opinion. So it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
taking opinions and turning it into a tweet. And it was tweeting it out in real time as it was learning it. So first, it was a hi, hello. And 24 hours later, it just got sick of all the comments and just started blurting out Hitler stuff.
So crazy.
So garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you put into it. So it's just, I think everybody's interpretation of what it's going to be is the same as the way we look at ourselves.
Mm,
What do we expect of ourselves? Well, what do we expect from this robot, or this not robot, this AI or machine language or whatever we decide to this algorithm to help us. At the end of the day, it's unrealistic to expect it to be human, but we do want to shoot for the sky, the stars or the sky. We always want to see how far we can go before we fall off.
mm,
And I think that being said, we're always going to keep pushing the limits, but we're never going to get to what you guys do. Interpreting human responses and being able to read them
yeah.
and then help guide them. That's going to be tough for an AI to do ever.
Yeah.
I think that maybe you'll have support, maybe something that can give you indirect emotions, but something that'll guide us and direct us, that's going to be tough to replicate. It's going to be hard to turn you into an AI from what I see.
Yeah,
Well,
There's no
that's
data
good.
sets.
That's a good job security. I will say,
Yes.
like, having heard that, I think one of the things that would be cool is if it was present in a part of conversations and pulled out themes. I think that
Yeah.
that is something that I struggle with. It's also just something that a tool. It's a skill that you develop.
right.
But
Mhm.
an AI, something present would help me, like, practice that skill, improve on that skill. And I can be like, okay, when I take my own notes, comparing notes with the AI, okay, they've
Mhm.
got this, they've got
Yep.
finances, they've got children. Okay, so I have this. And I think that there are ways, but yeah, in terms of the actual connection, it's so pivotal, or it's
Mhm.
so crucial to have that when we're talking about the human heart and human
Yeah.
feelings and emotions and humanity.
Yeah,
But
because
Moments of
that's
truth.
augmenting what it is that you want to do. I think that, and I'm that's what I love about AI. It's just that the possibility of augmenting anybody to do more than what they can do or what they can
Hmm.
achieve is the real AI that I'm excited about. Yeah, all the other AIs they exist, but when it comes to this, if it's all about augmenting, say, workforce, augmenting an individual to
There you
do
go.
better and more in life, take the task away that help somebody to do more. All
mhm.
for it. That's like an extension. Like you have this phone in your hand, and that phone is extension of your body, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to physically walk over to somebody and tell them what it is that you want to say on a text message, right?
Hmm.
So it's a part of your extension of your body. How about we augment ourselves using an artificial intelligence or machine learning technology, and do good for others, not just for ourselves? And I think that's what it comes down to. But with that, I am just super hyped right now to say, ay, 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 because it's Adam's turn to say, ay, 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 and call this an end.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm with you. I I can't even do it because you got me on
I
that one.
know.
You caught me off guard. Ay.
Oh my god.
All right, Ada, your turn.
Oh my god. I feel so nervous now.
Come on.
There you go. I can
I
hear.
know you can do better than that, but we're gonna let
Oh
this one
my gosh.
go.
Yes, thank you.
Read it out, right?
The first one, you can replay the first one over again. I approve that one.
Hey, hey,
Well,
we're
thank
just
you.
gonna fill it in. We're gonna fill
Yeah.
it in with like like another I. We're gonna be like
Yes,
paste it in the sound bite.
that's perfect. You have my permission. Take the
I'm
first
gonna
one
probably
and
clip from Google and just add it in there. This saw that.
Yeah. I'm gonna get like a real Mexican one, like the one
yes,
that like that hits a real long ay, and then
yes.
ay.
Well, this
Uh,
conversation had its ups and downs, and I am so glad, Ada, that you joined us for this conversation, because this is the
yes,
kind of human in the loop that we need. And thanks for
yes.
adding that human in the loop concept to the reality here. So, with that, thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Yep.